February 2024 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. My name is Kelly Donovan. I'm the chair of this board. For those of you who've never attended one of our meetings, and I think I remember most of you from last meeting we had, but I'll quickly explain how the meeting is conducted. First, we'll ask the applicant to come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, discuss your proposed project or request for variance or interpretation in this case. The floor will then be open for anyone who'd like to speak in favor or against the proposed project. Once everyone's had an opportunity to speak, the public hearing will be officially closed and no new testimony can be taken. After public hearings have been held, the board will deliberate and make a decision on each case. You're welcome to stay throughout the deliberations, but again, no public input is permitted. For those applicants who wish not to stay through deliberations, planning department will be available tomorrow with the board's decision. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a 5-member board. Tonight, we have all 5 members present. Good to see you all. I will now call the roll. Ms. Resnetti, and Mr. Mazzo, Ms. Bucci, Mr. Landers, and Mr. Donovan is present. We had a very nice lengthy minutes. Thank you very much. They look great. Did everybody get a chance to look them over? Any changes, additions? Miss anything?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the December 12th meeting.
Okay. Could I get a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. We've moved right along. We're up to our first case of the evening, and does it really matter which order these go in, or as written? Okay, first one on the docket is 10 Johnson Ave, Binghamton West LLC. It's an appeal of the zoning officer's determination for a group of 3 unrelated individuals that do not meet the criteria for a family in the functional or factual equivalent of a family in the R1 as residential single unit dwelling district. Is the applicant here? Hi. You want to come on down? Okay. Did you push the button?
Is that better?
That's much better.
My name is Mark Leisha. I live in Vestal. My wife and I are local landlords. We've been renting apartments in Binghamton for 16 years, and our offices are located at 65 Leroy. My wife and I, as our tenants, have concerns that are still hundreds of students living in R1 and R2 zones, and there are no zoning board signs in front of their houses still. We know of over 50 properties in these R1 and R2 zones renting to students, and not one of them has been in front of this board except us. Is there equal enforcement of the zoning ordinances going on? We received these violation letters the first week of September last year, so over 5 months ago. To date, not one other landlord has come before the zoning appeals board, so we're confused to what is being enforced. My wife and I have put in a FOIL request to find out what properties have received these letters and are yet to receive anything back from the city. But with our conversations and our attorney's conversations with various city officials, we know that there are other landlords who have received them. We also know from our student tenants and prospective tenants who we have been showing apartments to that there are other student landlords who have been cited for illegal housing arrangements. We're just wondering what the city is doing to enforce these violations. I think a lot of these issues boil down to a bad law that is extremely hard to enforce. Why make 4 unrelated people living together automatically unable to be a functional family, but make 3 unrelated people like our tenants go before this board to be judged a family or not a family? My wife and I have spent thousands of dollars on attorney fees and city fees to come before this board multiple times. There have been hundreds of man hours spent doing preparatory work on our side and on your side to get through multiple sessions of talking about this and working on this particular issue. We believe it would be much better for landlords, city officials, and tenants if the zoning law was rewritten to say no more than 2 unrelated people can be a functional family. There's already the rule which makes any living arrangement with a minor child a functional family, and 2 people can live together if they are unrelated. I don't believe the city of Binghamton is trying to outlaw 2 roommates living together. So why have this gray area for 3 unrelated people living together, which puts landlords and the zoning board of appeals in this weird situation where people have to decide who is a family and who is not? How many criteria need to be met to satisfy the definition of family in section 410-5 in the zoning code? There are 8 criteria in total. Out of these 8 criteria, our tenants have satisfied from 4 to 6 of these requirements. So our tenants satisfy half or more of the requirements, and they would satisfy more, but 2 of the 8 requirements speak to children, and our tenants do not have children, so they are unable to satisfy all 8 of the requirements. But 4 to 6 of the criteria certainly sounds like a family to me. To finish tonight, all of the tenants at 10 Johnson Ave and 18 Murray Street are moving out at the end of May. Some of them possibly would have moved out at the end of their leases anyway, but there were some tenants who would have liked to stay in their current living arrangements, but were unsure of the outcome of this board. These tenants were also upset and made to feel unwelcome in their neighborhoods. This wasn't clear to them until the last appeals meeting, but they were shocked at what their neighbors said and felt about them living on the same street. I don't believe it's a good action for a city to make people who have lived together for up to 4 or 5 years to not feel welcome in their homes and their neighborhoods. It is not good for the diversity or inclusiveness of our city to drive these people to have to live elsewhere. I believe that by changing the law to say up to 2 unrelated people can live together in R1 and R2 zones, it'll be much clearer to the tenants and the landlords and make the city officials' job enforcement much easier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will remind everybody that this is more or less a continuation of our last month's meeting, that when we were last together. So all the testimony that we had previously from the public is already it's been admitted as part of the case. So I would just remind everybody of that. And to the applicant, thank you for summarizing that in a different way than what you presented last time. I believe at this point we can consider opening for public. Yeah, I'm going to draw a blank there. Public hearing. I would like to make a motion to open public hearing for 10 Johnson. Could I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will also note, as we did last time, that this does not require any seeker. And with that, I would invite anyone present wishing to speak in favor or against the interpretation for 10 Johnson to please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Come on, right ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Russell Maines. I am an attorney. I represent the Leachas and their entities that own the 2 properties. Board already has a lot of paperwork from me, as well as my comments from last time, so I don't think there's really a need to rehash. I just wanted to stress a couple of the points that Mr. Leach had touched on. I do believe the statute is the ordinance is vague about the number of people, makes it difficult for residents to comply because of that vagueness, especially in the range from 1 to fewer than 4 people. Secondly, as Mr. Alicia indicated, he has taken what he perceives to be corrective action, mostly because the tenants have decided they don't want to be there anymore. So the ones who are the subject of this particular application are going to be out within a couple of months. And I just stress that at least with respect to several of the tenants, some of those were already tenants, had already signed up to be tenants at the time the law was passed. So there are some issues about that you can take up with Corporation Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I I'm going to ask a question now. I know some members of the board had questions for the applicant or for the applicant's attorney regarding records we were interested in seeing. Do either of you have that? I think we're looking for information on driver's licenses, where people are registered to vote. Were there other things? Right.
Want the attorney back down here? Or somebody
They're
else?
discussing it.
Hi again, it's Russ Maines. I spoke with Mr. Alicia. He told me, he did indicate when we were here last time in December that he'd provide license and registration information. He's decided not to because those tenants have not signed up to renew, so they're moving out.
Okay,
I can't swear to it, but I believe we indicated in the paperwork how many people we had. So we're not trying to mask that. There are some people there who are tenants, who are rather college students.
Mhm.
Some of them moved out. There is at least one couple. So that's all there in the paperwork.
okay.
Thank
Thank you. Any other questions before we let him slip away again? No? Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor or against the proposed interpretation? Yes.
Just want to note, we received 9 letters in opposition that were uploaded on Basecamp.
How many are new from what we had previously? I know there was at least one.
One, two. Two,
Two new ones.
and a third that didn't submit a letter before, but did speak at the last public hearing.
I'm going to assume that those are similar to the others that we have already heard, or should we read them in?
Mostly, most of the reasons for opposition are the same as before. It's up to you whether you want to read them into the record or not. They're available on Basecamp to you and the public.
Yeah, we all got them in our packets. Does anybody need to hear them read now? Okay. I do have a question for staff. This section 410-5. What is the genesis of that section? Is that pre-existing, and what the timing of it? Is that developed by city council?
The definition of family?
Yeah.
So that family has been defined in the code for a long time. There's a section of the code that says that all dwelling units in our districts have to be occupied by a family or the functional equivalent of a family. And since that rule is in place, the code has to define what a family is. So that definition, a definition of family, has been in there for a long time. The current definition was an update that started in 2019. And the purpose of it was to have more objective measures of what constitutes a family. Before that amendment, it was a little bit more subjective. The zoning officer would have to go in there and make judgments about their lifestyle and determine whether or not he or she felt that they meet the definition of a family. It was updated to be black and white things. Do they have local employment? Have they lived together for more than a year? Things that are measurable. And so that was the purpose, was to make it easier to enforce.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor or against the decision on 10 Johnson? Yes. If you have to, if you're going to speak, you have to come up so we can get you on record. Thanks. Thank you.
So do I have to say my name?
Mhm.
My name is Margot Bordeaux.
And then you have to get near that.
All right, got it?
You got it.
All right. Sorry I was late. My name's Margot Bordeaux. I live at 50 Johnson Ave. I am opposed to this for some very practical reasons. One, I have never read anything documenting the need for additional housing for unrelated individuals that this exception could provide housing for. So I haven't read anything saying there's a need. And kind of my logic is, if there's a request for a change, there should be a need. So the second piece would be that I have seen documentation that there is a need for additional rentals for families in the community. So I've got those two pieces. And the last piece, which is totally subjective, is that the property in question has been owned by the landlord for quite some time. And it's one of the 4 worst properties on our street. We live in a beautiful street. My husband and I moved there about 4 years ago. Love the neighborhood. And we're not opposed to students, but we want a good, beautiful neighborhood. And if the landlord took care of the property, it might be a different thing. But if he's not taking care of it when it's for families, I'm concerned that he won't take care of it in the future. So if he's not going to take care of the community, I don't think the council should bend for his request. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Okay. I believe I can close the public hearing at this point. I would move to close the public hearing for 10 Johnson second over here. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we can now deliberate this, and it's somewhat different of a deliberation than I'm used to. I'm used to hitting the points of an area variance or a use variance, and this does not have any of those criteria. We're just looking at the criteria on the back page of this application. And before we do, I've got to say that I do agree with a lot of the things that the applicant had to say, that perhaps the city could do a better job of defining this criteria. I'm sure there was a lot of time put into it to get where it is now, but I'd like to see it a little bit better. I don't think that's our place to do that. What we're here to look at is, does this situation, and again, I feel for the applicant. There are many properties that this affects. We're dealing with one or two properties. We don't set the standards for this. We're interpreting for this case only. Okay, so regarding the criteria for, is this a family or a operating family unit? And the counsel for the applicant did state that we had 5 or 6 of the criteria met by a good number of these the renters in these situations. That being said, I think some of them are more important than others. How do you all feel about that?
I'd also like some clarification as to which of those specific items apply to each unit. Because simply saying 5 to 6 or whatever isn't really clear.
I agree, but I would also say that some of them are more important to me than others. Like the third one that's listed, whether or not different members of the household have the same address for purposes of voter registration, driver's license, motor vehicle, and their summer residences. That to me tells me, are you a student here for 9 months, or are you a resident?
I agree, but we don't have that information.
I know, but it's also one of the most important criteria, I believe. Right. Well, I think they're relying on other things like sharing of costs and preparation of food and things like that, which they talked about in our last meeting. And the furniture And I think some of them had the employment issue that they were employed within 100 miles. And that they were living together for more than a year. I think they detailed some of those things at our last get together.
Kelly, do you want me to go through Group A and Group B, those criteria which criteria were met according to the applicant?
To me, I don't think it's that critical. All the ones that were hit, it's the ones that are missing to me that are more critical. But if you want to, sure.
I don't know if that'd be helpful to
Is that
Yes.
helpful for you guys?
just,
Okay,
okay. So for 10 Johnson Ave, Group A, which was the unit on the right side, the applicant stated that they share the whole unit, that it's not a rooming house with private bedrooms. There are no minor children. They do share some costs. They did not provide the addresses for voter registration or driver's licenses. They stated that the tenants share some ownership of furniture and small appliances. There are no children enrolled in local schools. They stated that for this group, all 3 residents have local employment. They stated that all 3 have been living together for 4 years. And that was it for that group.
Well, this particular unit, they only have 1 student, if it's 3 tenants, there's only 1 student as of today. Okay. That was another big point. There's only 1 out of 3. The other 2 have graduated and remained in the area after the graduation. 1 out of 3.
okay, but there's also no record on the licenses, voter registration, all that.
They're legal.
But as I've kind of stated to these guys, I find those more definitive and if we're gonna come up, I would suggest to whoever's doing this improvement of the criteria to maybe weight some of these things that they are, if you don't, or some that are, you cannot miss, like 1, 2, and 3 have to be considered, and then supporting documents or supporting these family unit, the following 4 items might be desired, but just my opinion. Are we going just section by section?
Yeah, I think you should make a determination on each tenant group. And so there should be 4 groups that you look at.
So and four interpretations we're looking for tonight.
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion on the A side of 10 Johnson?
Well, I think if we're gonna go through each point on the interpretation, then you have to take each point and drill down on that, because if they're showing that common ownership of furniture and appliances, that's what it says in the criteria, right? But when we had the discussion, it was, some small appliances, but it was established that the furniture is provided for these renters.
Correct.
Correct. So to say that they might have split the coffee pot or have shared the expense of a toaster oven is a lot different than common ownership of furniture and appliances. So if we need to drill down on what's a furniture and what's appliances, I think that would be not a good smart use of our time, but I think we need to be clear that it's a furnished apartment.
Mhm.
Each room is furnished.
Good point.
Okay, that's my point.
Also too, do they share the gas and electric bills, or they do share the gas and electric?
So we're good with going to side A, side B, then going to the next property, side A, side B.
Sure.
Were you saying you wanted to go through point by point? Or,
Saying that if that's the criteria that we are using, then let it keep it the criteria, but I would like to establish that furniture and appliance are different than a few odd pieces of extras. But these apartments this apartment is furnished,
So you're saying that point's not met?
correct?
Okay.
All right,
Gotcha.
now, if they're sharing the gas and electric, are all three of their names on the gas and electric bill? That's something, well, I'll tell you, I'm not married, I live with my girlfriend, she lives in my house. And to prove, because she works for the state, so I could get insurance, I had to prove she lived with me for 6 months and her name had to be on those bills also. So that made us a functional family. That's something, you know, that the state required.
Are there locks on the doors of the bedrooms in that unit?
This sign where the laws may change.
Yeah.
We would have happily given no furniture in the lease, which we're doing going forward at all the property. No furniture, we're not renting any arrangements like they are here. But we would have told them to put the knife signal on their name. Some of this has been signed the way we historically did business before this law was passed. Now, the law's passed, now you're looking at it after the fact, you know what I'm saying? Whereas going forward, I mean, if you want knife tag and two people's names, you have two roommates, we'll just put in the lease and have both be on the knife tag. We just don't know new territory forever.
Any more discussion on side A? Then. Oops, in the right place here. Then. We had enough discussion, do you feel? Is there more that we need to have discussed here?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just quickly introduce myself.
Thank
So you guys aren't looking at an unfamiliar face for too much longer. I'm Nick Cortez from Coughlin and Gearhart. We've been working with the planning department on this particular issue and been providing some advice with respect to these applications and also with respect to potential longer term amendments to the law. Don't know how the latter will look yet, but obviously I think that you're currently approaching it the right way by, interpreting the law as it's written presently, regardless of what might be different about it in the future. And from a personal standpoint, I would recommend, and of course you're welcome to do this any way you choose, to step through this the same way that you would step through an area variance or a use variance. And for the sake of developing the record as completely as possible, to just make brief determinations. You don't need to necessarily drill down into an extremely micro level, but make brief
Okay.
determinations on the various criteria, just so we have that all in the record in case it needs to be reviewed in one venue or another.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Good to meet you. So we've already talked about a number of the criteria. We might as well hit all the criteria, however much we need to. Obviously, presence of minor children, they've not, no one had minor children. We had discussion of the proof of sharing of expenses for food and things like that, and preparation, consumption of food. I'm not sure that that there was any strong evidence in one way or the other. Whether or not different members of the household have the same address, voter registration, driver's license. We've got no feedback, and I'm pretty sure there is no evidence to that effect. Common ownership of furniture, as you've already stated for this side. It's furnished apartment. There may be shared small appliances and whatnot. Employment within 100 miles, and in this unit for sure, I'm pretty sure a good number of them, one member was a student, the other three all worked. They've been living together for more than a year. They kind of showed that through testimony. And any other factor not reasonably related. There was not other evidence presented. And having gone through that, I would make a motion for 10 Johnson, the A side, to affirm the zoning officer's determination that the residents of Unit A, the right side of 10 Johnson Ave, do not satisfy the criteria for a functional and factual equivalent of a family pursuant to section 410-5 A and B of the City of Binghamton zoning code. Could I get a second? All in favor? Aye, that's unanimous. Let's move on to B, please. And the B side. Why don't you start us off there with our son?
Sure. Yeah, so my laptop died, but I was able to write down.
You can have my minutes. It's right
Oh,
here.
okay, perfect. So they lived together for 4 years on side B. They share ownership of some household items. And they share the unit. It's not rented by the room. Those were the 3 criteria that were met for that group.
Okay. Did it say anything about how long did you mention how long they lived together?
Oh, yes, did I? They lived
Yeah.
together for 4 years?
Okay. And refresh my memory, on the B side, were there any of them students? Do you recall?
Which page be now?
The B side of Johnson.
Let's left.
One student. Right,
Uh-huh.
left side, they are. I don't- I
All
don't have
students.
A, B. My.
Okay.
I have it right, sorry.
Yeah,
Last one I was giving you, left and right, I can give you exactly what they have.
this is the left.
Left side, 4 years living together.
Yep.
Second year at this particular apartment, one works locally. Some of the furniture appliances there, and obviously they share their rent costs, utility, internet, other household expenses. Share food preparation.
Okay. Thank you very much. Going through the criteria here that we have established, again, no minor children through no fault of their own. Proof of the sharing of expenses for food, rent. It was testified that a lot of those costs are shared. The one that bothers me is the different address for the purpose of voters registration, driver's license, motor vehicle registration. Seeing no other proof, I'm assuming that there is no proof that they're at that address. Common ownership of furniture, again, same question that Ms. Bucci had. Furnished apartment. Employment of the householders within 100 miles, you said one or two of them were working. And the rest were students. They've been living together for more than a year. And I don't see any other pertinent reason whether the group is functional equivalent. Any other comment on B side? The left side? Okay. Then I would like to make a motion for 10 Johnson, Unit B, the left side. Motion to affirm the zoning of officers' determination that the residents at Unit B, left side of 10 Johnson to Johnson Avenue do not satisfy the criteria for a functional and factual equivalent of a family pursuant to section 410-5 A and B of the City of Binghamton zoning code. Could I get a second? All in favor? Aye, that's unanimous. Okay, let's move on to 18 Murray. 18 Murray, Binghamton Ventures LLC. It's also yours. Do you want to come on down, or do you want to let your statement from earlier stand? I understand where you're coming from. And I do understand it looks like you're dealing with a moving target, and the rules were changed midstream in your lease agreements. And I feel for you on that. But we got to do our best moving forward to do what's right for you, for the students, and for the city. So, yep. And the only thing we can clarify is these certain individual cases. And as we stated last time, I'm sure that the board has no interest or understanding that this will result in anyone being displaced from their rentals before the end of their rental term. Right?
It's highly unlikely, yeah.
I mean, that's not my intent. Our intent, we can't make you do any of these things. We can make an interpretation. And that's our role here. 18 Murray Street, similar situation, different street, different house. This is a corner lot, I believe. Most everybody here is very familiar with this area. So we're on to a new address. Is there, I would like to make a motion to open the public hearing for 18 Murray Street. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, at this point, anyone wishing to speak in favor or against the proposed interpretation for 18 Murray Street, please step forward.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm
good to
Liz
see-
Flynn. Nice to see you too. Thank you guys for being here tonight. Liz Flynn, I am a neighbor immediately next to that property. A little history, the property's been in my family since the 1940s. I purchased it recently, so I've been in that building for the last 5 years. Similar to 10 Johnson, my complaint is not the students. Our neighbors right now are great, super personable, polite, quiet. It's the property. And our neighborhood, that part of the west side, it's a beautiful neighborhood. And it is, as 10 Johnson, one of the worst properties on the block. It's just not maintained well. And when they do try to maintain it, it's the bare minimum. This summer, the siding was painted. It needs to be completely ripped off, completely rotted, and we're the house that butts up to it. So we see it and we see the creatures that go in and out of it. So just similar sediments, no issue with students, just issues with the upkeep of the property.
Thank you. I see some big confused faces out there. This is the zoning board of appeals meeting. We have to finish up and then we'll get on to the next scheduled activity in here. So sorry to hold you up. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor or against the interpretation for 18 Murray Street? Okay. Seeing none, I would move to close the public hearing for 18 Murray Street. Could I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye, that's unanimous. Okay, so let's get into our discussion. I hate to say it, but it's very similar, if not almost identical, but we do have some different data points. So if you could fill me in on the A and B, it's A is right, B is left. So we'll start with A.
So A, which has the mailing address 18 Murray Street, it's their third year living together as a group. One resident works locally, brought their own furniture and some appliances. They share rent costs along with utilities and other housing costs. They share in the preparation, storage, and consumption of food. And that's it for that group.
Okay. Any questions, any discussion before we get into the criteria? Okay, so let's go through the criteria like we have in the other two units previously. Presence of minor dependent children, that's a given. We know that's not going on there. Proof of the sharing of expenses for food. There seems to be some proof and some testimony to that effect. Whether or not the different members of the household have the same address for purpose of the voter registration, driver's license, motor vehicles. There's no proof on that. Common ownership of furniture. Again, this is a furnished unit. Same situation. Okay. So there may be some sharing of some of the appliances and stuff. Employment, I heard one or two that are employed within 100 miles of the city. They have been living together. Did it say anything about been living together for a year or more? Yes. I believe all of them did.
Years.
Yes, so 3 years. And there's no other reason stated as to why the group should be considered functional or equivalent. Any other discussion on that? Okay. And so I would propose a motion for 18 Murray, A side right. A motion to affirm the zoning officer's determination that the residents at Unit A, right side of 18 Murray Street do not satisfy the criteria for a functional and factual equivalent of a family pursuant to section 410-5 A and B of the City of Binghamton zoning code. Could I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous. And moving to the B side, if you would be so kind, Tito.
So the B side has a mailing address of 12 Vincent Street. All three students work locally. This is their first year living together. They brought in some of their own items. They share rent and utilities.
Employment.
No, nothing about employment. And they share in these preparation, storage, consumption of food.
You see how long they've been together?
This is their first year.
First year. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we start? Going through the criteria, presence of minor children, again, it's not their fault. They don't have minor children. Proof of the sharing of expenses of food, rent, ownership, utilities, that was testimony that they do. Whether or not different members of the household have the same address for the purpose of voter registration, driver's license, motor vehicles. Summer residents or filing taxes, no evidence was provided. Common ownership of furniture, that's furnished, but there is again, probably some sharing of some appliances and some assorted smaller furniture. Employment of the householders within 100 miles, I think you said one. No information, okay. They've been living together for a year, and there was no other testimony related to whether or not the group of persons constitute the functional equivalent of a family. And should I be calling this 12 Vincent or 18 Murray?
The parcel is 18 Murray. This is this, I would just call it Unit B of 18
Okay.
Murray.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And I would like to make a motion for 18 Murray, Unit B, to affirm the zoning officer's determination that the residents at Unit B, left side of 18 Murray, do not satisfy the criteria for functional and factual equivalent of a family pursuant to section 410-5 A and B of the city of Binghamton's zoning code. Could I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye, that's unanimous. Again, I'm sorry for the decision we've reached, but that's what we've come to. Hopefully, we get more clear on what we expect of everyone involved going forward. I never did close the public hearing on this.
You did, you did.
I did. I forgot where I was at. Did you say we have any other business? You guys have anything to discuss? I know we have other people wanting to use this, so I would make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
Second.
motion. Second.
All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you also. Thank you.